let's continue the football. He's got his phone the wrong way again. Ian Beckles in. Listen, good, buddy. There he is. That hood.
There we go.
What's going on, big man?
How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Just talking all things football. A great weekend of football all the way around. Let's start with the first game on Saturday with Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes and the brilliant. I still don't know how Houston just they can't put an arm on Travis Kelce. 7 for $117, but I look at the offensive line for Houston not being able to keep that Kansas City pass rush off him. 8 sacks. It's kind of wild that we don't talk enough about the defensive line for Kansas City, but Ian, they just continuously every single year ball out, and they're kind of the unsung heroes of this team's success.
Well, I was listening to your rant before I came on, and you use a lot of words to say that games are won in the trenches. And I don't know where you got that philosophy from, but somewhere along the way, some wise cat got in your mind.
Right.
I let you know the games are won in the trenches. You know the love I had for Chris Jones back in the day.
Right.
And Kansas City should know as well as anybody else how it is to lose in the trenches, because that's how they lost at Raymond James Stadium when they were here last time. So everybody focuses on quarterbacks throughout the playoffs, but I swear to God, they are not. The quarterbacks don't win games, because if your offensive line ain't blocking worth of shit, you're SOL.
And you know what's funny too? I was thinking about you yesterday because Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, and everybody was talking about how it was such a great move. And I think this is a very cautionary tale when it comes to paying a running back like a Saquon Barkley for this reason. Ian, their offensive line was intact. It was ready. That was the piece that it needed to really take the rushing attack over the hump. But you can't just say that if you took Saquon Barkley on another team with holes on the offensive line, that he would have been this successful. This is a team that's prided itself on its offensive line play for the better part of a decade or two. And you see, even when guys retire, even when Kelce moves on, even when guys like Jason Peters move on, it's a mentality that the Philadelphia Eagles have, like, hey, we have to be strong in the trenches. But to be able to see Saquon come here and to be able to take a Philly running attack that was already good with Jalen Hurts to the next level. I mean, I know Ponzo was cringing because of, every Giants fan out there could barely watch that game, but it was the marriage more than anything. It wasn't just Saquon going there, right, Ian? It was the fact that he went to a place that not only loved to run the football, but they had kind of the foundation in place with that offensive line.
Well, regardless what Saquon did this year with the Eagles, the Giants still have to let him go. I mean, if the Giants had Saquon Barkley, they would have a great running back without an offensive line, without a quarterback, and without established wide receivers. So they'd be exactly what they had been, and they wouldn't have won any games. There's not a handful. There's 2 running backs left in the league, okay? Henry and Saquon. That's it. That are difference makers. If you put Henry or Saquon on legitimate football teams, they become Super Bowl contenders right away. The Eagles are one of those teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a weapon. He can't do it himself. We've seen that. But when you put Jalen Hurts behind a great offensive line and behind a weapon like Saquon, you could just hand it off for 200 a game. That makes Jalen Hurts look a lot better, because there's been many quarterbacks come and go out of the league that didn't have the luxury of handing off for 200 yards a game. It makes you so much better as a quarterback when you throw the ball 25 times as opposed to 45 times. So if the Eagles stay healthy, I think they're going to be good for a while. I didn't think they had chemistry going into this playoffs, but I guess chemistry is not important when you got some guys balling like that.
Yeah, no doubt. And you look at the team that they're going to be facing off in the NFC Championship game and the Washington Commanders, and you and I have spoken about how hard it is to be a rookie in the National Football League. And we've spoken a lot about Tristan Wirfs over the years, and just everybody's not like that. Like, don't look at Tristan Wirfs and say, hey, this is how you should play, because that's the anomaly. Jayden Daniels is an anomaly, Ian. And not just the fact that he's able to win these games, but he understands probably as much as any quarterback, you cannot make mistakes. And it may only take one. It may only take one, like we saw in the Buccaneers game, and it doesn't matter who's to blame. But from what you're seeing from Jayden Daniels, what can you say about this kid?
I mean, as a rookie, he's going to be in the NFC Championship game. It doesn't matter what I say, because that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. If you'd have told me Jayden Daniels and Washington's team was going to go to the NFC Championship, I was at the beginning of the year. I said, "What do you want to bet?" I'll bet you anything. I'll bet you anything. And Jayden Daniels doesn't need my a seal of approval. Now watch going forward. Remember, I said this in the next 5 drafts. Everybody's looking for the next Jayden Daniels. That's what's going to happen, and it doesn't work that way. You're going to go, oh, look at this guy. He's 6'5". He runs well. That doesn't mean he's Jayden Daniels, because the stuff I hear in the periphery and the outskirts of football, what makes him great, okay? And his leadership and the kind of person he is, I think that's what makes you great. What made Peyton Manning great was he had a good arm. He had a fantastic mind for football, but he was obsessed and he's passionate about something. Right. I think Jayden Daniels is in that category. From what I hear, he's a beast. You remember going back, and I think it was Dabo had him in front of the board one time, and he was spitting out answers, and Dabo's like, whoa. This is before he made it to the NFL. So obviously the kid loves the game. He's passionate about the game, and he's a student of the game. And good luck to Washington, not next year, but the year after that, because he's going to be the earliest guy to make $50 million. No doubt. No doubt.
Do you think we're heading towards, and I said this before you hopped on, I just feel like we're heading towards every single quarterback has, and I'm not saying they have to be so run-centric as we see from an Allen or Lamar Jackson or Jayden Daniels, but I think that as we go forward, every single quarterback has to have some type of run element to him, if at the very least, Ian, be able to evade pressure, because these defenders are getting better. You have to have the schemes are getting better, and you have to be able to kind of keep the defense honest. And I mean, you look at the last 4 quarterbacks: Jayden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. Mahomes isn't the guy that's going to run the ball 15 times, but you know as well as I do, if he needs to run for 12 yards on 3rd and 11, he's going to be able to do it. Hell, we see it with Baker Mayfield, right? Those guys. I think the days of Jared Goff, I don't know if they can win a Super Bowl in Detroit with him as their quarterback, because when he has to move outside the pocket a little bit and try to make these throws and he's off platform, we see the same thing with Tua, right? If Tua's not making that first, second read and he's got to move around, he's not as accurate. Do you agree that we're really seeing kind of a change in the quarterback position and the guys that are kind of flat-footed in the pocket? I mean, I just don't know if we're going to see any more guys like that.
Well, you're saying it's changing. I think it's been changing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I ask you how many, dead ducks sit in the pocket anymore, there's not a lot. There's just not a lot.
The last guy, I think that, I mean, because you look at Goff and Tua, I think those are the two like new age type of guys, but I think Stafford, right? Like Matthew Stafford was a guy that's, I think, kind of the last of a dying breed kind of thing.
Herbert a little bit.
Yeah, but he'll still be able to move. Like I look at Herbert and Lawrence the same way, 2 bigger 6'5" type dudes where they can move if they have to. And to a lesser extent, like I just mentioned with Baker, but you even look down the list. I mean, maybe Dak is that guy. He's a little bit more of a pocket guy, but he hasn't won anything either. So that's the thing. When the defense is so good, the weather's jacked up, you can't do anything else. Sometimes you just got to be able to run the football, even for just a couple of yards. I don't know. What's your take on Detroit? Because it looks like they're going to lose both coordinators. I said that they remind me of Philly from 2 years ago when they lost both coordinators, and then they just pooped on themselves last year before the Bucs smacked them in the playoffs. Feel like it's a missed opportunity for Detroit. I know they had a ton of injuries, but what's your concern level going forward if they're going to be able to kind of get back to this spot?
Well, I don't want to act like I have a crystal ball, because I certainly do not. I'm wrong often when I prognosticate about people's future. For me, Detroit Lions are built the right way. Okay, they're built to where they can still lose a bunch of players and still win games. In order to win a championship, all the moves and planets have to align, okay? Having, 11 starters out or something like that, your moves are not aligned. You know very well, if you're missing a right guard sometimes, it's a big deal. If you're missing that defensive tackle, you're missing Hutchinson. Like, if you have all these guys, it's a completely different situation. And I think Campbell's done a great job. And people love to say, oh, the windows are closing. I don't believe in all that. I really don't. I think next year they go to training camp, they'll be as confident as they were this year. They still won a lot of games. Many teams have had great seasons and they bow out quickly. And everybody was like, well, they got to make wholesale changes. Well, it's hard. It's hard to all peak at the same time. And then sometimes you just got to give credit to the other team. Washington, we lose to Washington. We're like, oh, the Bucs weren't that good. Oh, really? Well, the Bucs played them pretty damn hard, and
Yeah.
Washington is still in this thing. So it's easy to judge a team and think they got to make these wholesale changes. But if you look at the roster and Detroit and the players person for person, that's a good football team. They're going to be good for a while.
When you look at Washington, it makes the Bulls and Bucks defense look a little bit better after putting up 45 against the Lions, don't it?
No, and the thing is with football, football's the strangest sport because you'll have a team. I think in soccer, when you have a talented team, I think they win.
Right.
In football, you have a talented team, and these guys are going to San Francisco, and then they lose 10 games. You know what I mean? So, football is a weird sport where if it's just a little bit off, you lose a funny game, you have a funny injury, all of a sudden it starts to slide. And like I said, timing is everything. And the Buccaneers. Think about the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers could have been in the NFC Championship with a couple bounces here and there in the last 5 years. So they end up winning one, but a couple bounces here and there, you'll win more than one. Like Kansas City, they seem to get a lot of bounces.
Bounces. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it just happens in sports, right? When this team, when you have a dynasty, the MJ and the Bulls were cheating, Shaq and Kobe and cheating, Derek Jeter and the Yankees were cheating.
Yeah.
When you watch these games and you see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs getting these calls, like it's just that it's kind of the nature of the beast in sports, right? Doesn't make it right, Ian, but I mean, to the victor goes the spoils, and they get calls like this. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Well, I'm a firm believer in this, okay? Before the game, everybody knew if Kansas City won, they were going to complain about calls.
Mm-hmm.
I'm positive because all the calls they put on the memes on Instagram, they're bad calls. But I can go show you every single winning team every single week, and there'll be some bad calls that went against them, that went for them and against them.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, any call, like the other day when the two guys collided, helmet to helmet, and Patrick slid underneath, you don't see why they would call that a penalty. You know how fast football is? They have two guys barreling head down, and the quarterback moves abruptly, and they're like, oh my God, it's such a terrible call. Football's fast, everybody.
Yeah.
And that call is going to be made more often than not. So don't tell me that's the reason why Kansas City won, because if your team is beating Kansas City by whatever amount of points and there's 2 seconds left, you better hope that quarterback doesn't have the ball. So to me, Kansas City wins because they're better than everybody else, and they figure out a way to win at the end.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they have great coaching. They have great players. They know what it takes to win at this time of year. And we're barreling towards an AFC championship game. The Bills and the Chiefs. This game is just, I feel like this is one of those. All right, this is kind of the next step in the journey of Josh Allen. I want to ask you about the Ravens Bills game in a second, but I want to ask you about kind of, this seems like this is Josh Allen's time of like, if you're going to make it to the Super Bowl, this is like one of the final bosses in the video game. Like, you got to go into Kansas City and you beat Mahomes, right? I mean, everybody was looking at Buffalo. This is going to be a down year. Stephon Diggs is gone. Miami's going to take a step forward. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers are going to take a step forward. But Josh Allen and the Bills had other plans. Like, how do you see that matchup looking this weekend? As, I mean, this is just, it's must-see TV. Nobody's going to turn away from that game.
Well, it's kind of like this was inevitable, and it kind of had to happen in the AFC. This is what I said before the playoff starts. I go, literally any team could come out of the NFC, and it almost happened. We almost had a Washington Rams NFC championship. That would have been a humdinger. But I also said on the other side, it's Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City. That's it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it. And that's where we're at right now. It's almost Baltimore. What happens is Lamar gets all the grief for not being able to win the big one, although I didn't think he played poorly yesterday. He could play better, obviously. But we're at a point now where Josh Allen, if he doesn't figure out a way to beat Patrick Mahomes, the narrative has to start up that they have with Lamar. Yeah. Like Josh Allen's going to the Hall of Fame. But listen, it's a lot of times now you come close and not being able to close the door. Not saying it's his fault. But at the end of it, the quarterback always gets blamed for losses.
He gets the blame and he gets the credit. You're right, because as great as they feel today, and as great as Buffalo fans feel today, they're going to feel shitty next Monday if they lose to Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, right? You're not going to remember, nor are you going to care about beating Lamar Jackson in the game at home at Buffalo. You got to go. This is a legacy. This could be I say that too, Ian, but it almost like he has to win the Super Bowl too, right? Because I guess it's one thing to beat Patrick Mahomes, but if you go in and then you lose the Super Bowl, I mean, what do you think as far as legacy and as far as Josh Allen goes? Is it incremental where they take some solace in beating Patrick Mahomes if they do and then lose? Or is it like it doesn't matter if it's a successful season, they got to win the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, listen, if we talk about the greatest quarterbacks ever, Dan Marino was in the conversation, but what do you have to say about Dan Marino? He never won the big one. You have to say it.
Yep.
Every other great one won a big one. Charles Barkley is the guy in basketball. If Josh Allen doesn't win a championship, he's going to be that guy with all the talent in the world, but didn't win the championship. I know a lot of Buffalo Bills fans, probably one of the more loyal fan bases out there. Monica from the Bone is probably the biggest Bills fan I've ever met in my life to a point where it's crazy. I had a conversation with her the other day, and she says, "Who do you think's going to make it for the AFC?" And this was before playoffs started. And I said, "I think the Bills are." And she looks at me, she goes, "Oh, I hope so, because if they get to the Super Bowl, there's no way they can lose, because that would be impossible." And I go, it's more impossible to lose after 30 years than it is to lose 4 straight. I go, please don't say that. Yeah. I go, it's 50-50 and they make it, period, because there's 2 teams. To lose 4 Super Bowls straight, that's improbable. But to lose 1 40 years later, I wouldn't say that if I was a Bills fan.
I still can't believe that happened. And I got a chance to interview Andre Reed a couple of years ago and asked him about that. He goes, "Jay, man, what are we going to do?" He's like, "I look at it as we got a chance to play in the Super Bowl 4 times. Like, everybody else is going to look at it that way, but I can't. Like it would ruin my life. Like, I just look at it as like, hey, man, we were the final 2 teams. I got to go to the Super Bowl 4 years. We were one of the best teams during that time." And I'm like, good for you, man, because in life, and this, it's all about perspective, right? It's not about what happens to you. It's how you deal with it. And then Mark Andrews is one of those guys right now. This is one of the best tight ends in the league in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. Poor guy. He's done everything he could battling through injuries. He's a great dude. He fumbles yesterday. He drops that 2-point conversion. I don't know if there's many people feeling worse than Mark Andrews on this Monday.
No way. And all due respect to Andre Reed, and I liked everything about Andre Reed, I think that's his mentality now. Okay?
Right.
Right after he lost the 4th one, I promise you, he's probably stayed in his basement in Buffalo for months. Right. I couldn't imagine going to a Super Bowl and losing 1. And just like Monica said, what are the odds? The 4th one, like, what are the odds you lose the 4th one? Your team is so good, you make it to 4 Super Bowls, and you can't figure out a way to win that 1 game. I was never blessed to be on good teams like that, but I don't know if I mentally would be able to deal with it. Like, I was in it 4 times and I ain't got no ring, that would be rough for me. That'd be rough.
Yeah, it wasn't even like they won it later on, right? I don't know how many of those guys went on to a different team and were able to win a Super Bowl. But, I mean, you look at a team like Baltimore, and I was so excited for that game. I picked the Ravens because I thought Derrick Henry would play a bigger impact. 16 rushes for Derrick Henry. There's something off about that number. You always say it's not about the yards, it's about the rushing attempts. They were undefeated, I think 11-0 this year when he ran for 85 yards. He ran for 84 last night, which is kind of crazy. What was your take on, did they underutilize Derrick Henry in the game?
Well, I just think you have to give Buffalo the credit, because if you keep on giving the ball to Derrick Henry, he's getting 6 yards a pop. We're going to see lots of Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. So the efficiency wasn't there. What you got to do against a Baltimore is stop them on 1st down, and then don't be 2nd and 4, where you can get a lot of different things in the quarterback running, and it's in their situation. Buffalo played some good defense. And listen, if Andrews catches that ball, we might have a different narrative about Josh Allen and Lamar today. So football's a funny thing, man. It really is. We look at athletes and we judge them afterwards solely by winning and losing, when the game is the same. Say Lamar lost that game yesterday. If Andrews catches the ball, they go to overtime and Lamar wins, we're gassing up Lamar. But today everybody's been talking about he can't win the big one. Quarterbacks don't win games by themselves. They can't. In order to complete a pass, the line has to be great. The play calling has to be good. Got to be catches. There's a lot of adjustments to be made. So football is about that whole team. And if one cat breaks down, it can go to the shits real quick.
I look at Lamar Jackson too. I think there's such this BS narrative when it comes to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, like not liking each other. Like they're competitors, man. They're going for the same thing. They both don't have a ring. But you look, when the game ended yesterday, what did Josh Allen do? He beelined in the opposite direction to go show love to Lamar Jackson. Those guys, because nobody else knows, right? Like, who knows what Josh Allen is going through better than Lamar Jackson, and vice versa? Two guys that want to beat Patrick Mahomes, want to get to the Super Bowl, want to win a ring. Both those guys, year after year, MVP caliber players, coming up short. And I love Lamar Jackson after the game saying, like, we got to hold on to the damn ball. And he was pissed. I like that. I like the transparency. And I know people snip certain things. They're like, oh, he was talking shit about Mark Andrews. No, he was talking about himself too.
Yeah, he was.
And for all the people that want to say, all right, Lamar, it's not on you, it's Mark Andrews. Listen, Lamar threw a duck for an interception. He also fumbled the football.
Yeah.
So as much as I love Lamar Jackson and his game, and I love that he had the swag and the composure to come back, like, just because it didn't happen at the end of the game doesn't mean he didn't make mistakes and contribute to the reason why they were behind in the first place. I think that's the hard thing when it comes. You're totally right about how, regardless of what happens at the end, like the same things happen during the game. And even like, let's say Baltimore does win that game. The conversation is Lamar Jackson battles back from mistakes to make plays to help his team win. And it's it's a resiliency narrative. But since they lost, those things still happened, and we can't ignore it. Just because he played at the end of the game, we can't ignore it. Doesn't mean you think he sucks. It doesn't mean that you don't think that he can win the big one eventually. But Ian, again, second year in a row, like, he's got to be more consistent, because you look at Jayden Daniels, who didn't turn the football over. Lamar Jackson still has to find that balance in these big games where, all right, yeah, I'm putting the team on my back, but you can't make those crucial mistakes, whether in the fourth quarter or the second.
Well, I bet if Josh and Lamar run into each other at Beef O'Brady's, they hug, they give mutual respect. They'll probably sit down and talk about a lot of different situations that only those two would really be exposed to. There has to be mutual respect with people in football, and there's an unwritten respect. Even I'm an old cat, okay? If I run into a new cat and I'm like, yo, I played back in the day, there'll be a little nod of respect, like, okay, you did it, you understand it. And what people don't understand is you can want to tear somebody's larynx out, but still have the utmost respect. I'll give you a good scenario. In the WNBA with Caitlin and Angel Reese. Every time Angel Reese bumps into her, everybody's like, look how rough it. They're competing. There's nothing Angel Reese wants to do more than beat her, and vice versa.
Right.
So look at, she's being mean. You're being mean to a rookie? Like that's sports to me. And I bet they respect the hell out of each other, but hate each other too. You know, Angel Reese is hating on Caitlin. Okay, she's getting all the pub, and she's hanging with Taylor Swift, and Angel's getting some love too. But there's going to be a love-hate thing, and I think Lamar and Josh had the same thing. There's respect, but I bet they don't love each other because the other one is stealing from them. They're stealing money. They're stealing a lot of things from them. So you think Magic Johnson and Larry Bird liked each other back in the day? I guarantee they respected each other and the hug now, but back in the day, they hated each other.
How about Tom Brady and Peyton Manning?
Hate, but now I guarantee they're cool, kind of.
But there can only be one, and that's the thing about the quarterback position too, right? It's so unique. Where in basketball, right, you can join up, right? Brady and Manning are never playing on the same team,
never.
So that's the thing with, like, you could have these bitter rivals in these other sports, but eventually, like, A-Rod ended up playing with Jeter, right? Like those guys did not like each other, but eventually A-Rod's like, I'll go play third. Football's so unique in that, where at the quarterback position, it's so territorial, where you're never going to see Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen on the same team. There's no super team in that aspect. You're not going to have that. I want to ask you real quick about the Bucs. We didn't mention Chris Godwin last week when we spoke. It's a dead cap hit of $18 million, even if he's not on the team next year.
Yeesh.
Right?
Yeah.
So why not bring this guy back?
They
for
will. They
19,
will.
20 million. Like the Buccaneers always seem to find a way, don't they?
Yeah, yes. And listen, Chris Godwin, it's all going to be about his body, okay? I don't want to hear of how this person came back from it and that person came back from it. I do know this. When it happened, right away I was like, whoa, like something was odd. And I don't like injuries like that, but go back and watch the film and then watch the way his teammates reacted when they looked at it. That's scary to me. Like I don't
Mhm.
know how bad it was, but when your teammates are hitting their knees and grabbing their heads, that's something backwards. Okay, so when something is on backwards, we never have an idea how they're going to come back.
Right.
Some don't come back. Some come back better. Some take a year. Some take 2 years. Some take 3 years. Do we love Chris Godwin? 100%. At $18 million cap hit, he's going to be here next year. Whether he's going to be 2, 3, 4, we don't know. But if he has an $18 million cap hit, he'd be better off in that locker room because he's good people. So it's not
Exactly.
like you're being Antonio Brown in the locker room and you're worried about how he's dealing with it. It's Chris Godwin. So I would be shocked if he's not a Buccaneer next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't wait for him to be back. And um, I'm excited with the Buccaneers next year, man. You look at some of these teams, and do you ever get that feeling too? Like when you watch Washington, you're like, damn, man. I think you did say it before. It was like you kind of daydream a little bit. It's one thing if your team sucks and they get bounced and you're not in the playoffs, but when you're a team like the Bucs and you get in, you start thinking, damn, man, you get one stop on Jayden Daniels. Obviously, they would have played Philly, they wouldn't have played Detroit. But then you look at it, it's like, man, could they have contained Saquon? You start going down the rabbit hole a little bit, like wondering, like, damn, man, we could have been talking about Buccaneers NFC Championship this weekend if it was a little different, right?
Well, as a Buccaneer fan, I think we look ahead and we try to be optimistic. And there's an optimistic side to it, that's for sure. I mean, if Mike comes back and Mike is Mike, if Chris Godwin come back and he is 70% of what he was, the people who grew this year on offense, if they continue to grow, Kate Otten plays like he did at the beginning of the year, our offensive line stays healthy, Baker stays healthy, Bucky stays healthy. Like there's a lot of ifs there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you can hope that exists, but there's another side to that. Mike Evans might get old. Chris Godwin may not be the same. What happens if just those two things come to fruition? I don't know if we're winning any championships. Defensively, we got to revamp our backfield, and we got to get a pass rush.
Right.
So we're not winning a championship with that defense. I'm not, and my boy JP from the Bones came. He said, "Man, I really like the Bucs offense." This was before the playoffs, and I go, "This is not a championship defense," and I still don't think it is. It's a defense that was opportunistic, did some things, but that's not a championship defense. I don't see it. Our offense wasn't good enough for that to be a championship defense. So Jason Light's got to figure out a way to bring in a fiend. We need a
Mm-hmm.
fiend. We don't have a fiend. Vita Vea can't lead our team in sacks anymore. I go back and forth with Warren Sapp, and Warren never liked Vita, and he was dogging him again this year. And I'm like, listen, you're comparing himself to you. He's more Vince Wilfork. And he was like, well, I never looked at it that way. I go, well, you're just looking at what you did. He's Vince Wilfork, who could also rush the passer. That's
Right.
what I look like in Vita Vea. And to me, Vita Vea is the least of our worries because, I mean, he holds his own. We need more Vita Veas.
You got that right. What do you got coming up this week in the life of Ian Beckles?
My hectic life that I live here, Jay. I get up in the morning, I get my little walk, I get my little breathing exercises. I've got a sauna now that I get in, I get my little sweat in.
Nice.
And then I go to Dignitary Cafe, drink some kava and kratom, and do my thing. Do a podcast here and there, and I pop on like a prostitute that I do on all the radio stations.
Oh boy.
A prostitute that doesn't get paid, and other than that, I'm just living me, bro. Just living a good life.
You heard it here first. Males only sauna wherever Ian Beckles is at. Dudes
Let's
only.
go.
Are we gonna be live on our podcast Wednesday or what?
If you guys can figure it out, you know me, Jay. I don't do that. I sit down. I always tell everybody, I'm the pretty face. Okay, I don't do the inside stuff. I'm the pretty face, and I keep sticking and moving.
I saw a picture the other day without the beard. Are you ever gonna shave the beard again?
I think the beard has become me. I don't know if it would
Yeah,
be
I didn't think so
shocking.
either.
I like myself without a beard, but
Yeah,
I also I think the beard is like it's almost becoming like my Papa Smurf beard.
it's a badge of honor kind of thing.
Yeah, Papa Smurf can't shave his beard.
Yeah.
Then he'd just be another one of the Smurfs.
You're like, dude, what's going on over there?
Right?
Yeah, but the only thing you're not a Smurf though. That ain't happening.
No, I'm the darkest Smurf ever.
That's
There was
right.
a black one. I think there was a black Smurf.
Did you? That was definitely like a Chappelle skit.
It
Or
was from
something.
Africa.
Did you see the? I sent you a video on Instagram of maybe Little People Atlanta.
Yes, that's my people style. You know, I got a thing for little people.
There you go, buddy. I think she was like the #1 model for little people. So
the one, the J-Lo looking one.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. And
There
then the twin Asian girls, I like them too.
We can do another hour just on Ian's 100%. Fetishes. All right, the one and only Ian Beckles. Follow him on all social media platforms. Go check him out at the Dignitary Tea in Cobb House, 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard, and I'll be there on Wednesday. Beck, appreciate it, brother.
One love, kid.
All right, man.